Joe Diamede here up in Frome in the UK, back from a long absence from my channel here, and I'm speaking with Chris and Cordelia on their farm called Vallis Veg in Frome, as I said, in Somerset, UK. And I'm just going to ask Chris here, what's the project about? What do we see behind us? What's going on in Vallis Veg?
Well, the project now is mostly about this marvellous market garden that you can see here, which back in the day I used to be the main grower, but now Cordelia has taken over and made it into what it is today. We bought the land, what was it, 14 years ago. We didn't live here originally. We kind of got into the idea of sort of a more sustainable rural living. We'd been living in London, so we bought this site, about 18 acres. Didn't really have much clue what we were doing. So we've sort of built it up slowly, but we wanted to, the market garden idea, the idea of producing fresh local veg sort of presented itself to us. It's healthy. Britain imports a lot of its fruit and veg. And it's something that we knew how to do to some extent, although it's been quite a learning journey. We got some other stuff going on the site, lots of trees, camping, bit of livestock, but yeah, the sort of mainstay of it is the veg garden. And yeah, we've been living on the site for the last 3 years. We got planning permission. It's a bit of a battle to convince the powers that be, quite rightly, I guess, to be able to live in the countryside, to support a local rural business. So the last 3 years we've been living on the site, which has just made a huge difference in terms of being able to make the site work financially and sort of being on the spot, being able to attend to all the different tasks. So this is probably not the best time of year to see the garden, but hopefully you can see that there are some cool things going on. So that's in a nutshell.
Excellent. Cordelia got called off quickly. We'll do her interview in a second. She got called off because a horse stepped on her daughter's toe. So that's life on the farm in Frome. So basically, Chris, and your background, were you a farmer? What was your background?
No, I was an academic, actually, a social scientist. So so it's been a whole new chapter. But I do a fair bit of writing and not really, a little bit of academic writing, but more sort of activist writing about sustainability and farming and the environment. And the cool thing about farming is that it's like absolutely the interface between the natural world and the human world. So although in some ways it's a big difference, in another way, it's exactly what I think, it's what social scientists ought to be focusing on. How do we make a living? How do we interact with the world around us? So,
right, I was going to say that when you said social scientist, I said this is an experiment in that field in many ways, and also other things you're doing, which we'll speak to Cordelia about, because not only is it market garden, just briefly, and before we sign off, what other aspects, because there's 18 acres around the Vallis Veg, so this is obviously a small part of it. What else is going on in the other aspect, not the farming aspect?
Right. Well, there's woodland. I don't know if that counts as farming, but we planted a lot of trees here, and there's all sorts of issues about that. But I think basically it made sense, and we've got camping here, and a lot of people coming to use the woodland. So that's been great. We've got an allotment area where local people come and grow their own veg, and we've got various interactions with local schools and school kids, not so much us doing that, but some local forest school teachers. So there's a lot of community interactions, and we're right on the edge of town, so that's great. That helps. Lots of school visits and a bit of kind of wildlife stuff. We've got our colleague Moon, who runs a little pollinator project, and we're sort of developing, there's all sorts of cool wildlife stuff, because the site, we don't use any agrochemicals, and a lot of it is, the bit here that you can see, the garden is quite intensively managed, but other bits are pretty much left alone. So so a bit of wilderness, bit of woodland, lots of people coming on to do different things. It's it's quite a sociable place. There's always people passing through, doing something or other, and some local volunteers as well. So yeah, it's quite busy.
Excellent, excellent. Wow. So, in a very big nutshell, that's an excellent way of usage. When you bought this, it was empty farm. What was it classified as?
Well, it had been it was basically a field of pasture, permanent pasture that a dairy farmer had owned it, but it wasn't actually I mean, originally the whole site was part of an older dairy farm. So yeah, permanent pasture with some cows on it. So yeah, it's a bit more varied now.
Excellent. Cordelia, come on in here. So, daughter, okay?
Yeah, she's good. Yeah, I don't know what you've talked about. So
Well,
I might
we
repeat stuff.
I'll just ask you quickly. Your role in the running of Vallis Veg now.
Okay.
What are you doing? Chris filled us in on the history and what's going on. But what are you doing on the land?
Okay, I'm running the market garden, and also the campsite. And I don't know if he talked about shared earth learning, which is not something I'm running, but it's another group who use the land for educational purposes. The market garden, what we're trying to do is devise systems that mean we need less time for growing the vegetables, which is obviously really important because vegetables are not a very high value crop. So, and labour is probably the most expensive input, definitely the most expensive input. So we are trying to get away from digging and also reduce the weeding down to an absolute minimum. And we're doing that by using a combination of mulch and an enormous amount of weed-free compost that's made from composting wood chips with urine and weed-free vegetable waste. And there are a couple of things we need in order to do that, which is space for the compost piles, because they're pretty big. They're probably 30 to 50 meters long. And then they need to stay there for a while because it takes a while for wood chips to compost down. We got a digger that we use to turn the compost heaps, and then we've just started covering them as well with a really great big mulch. So you can, when you turn them, then they heat up again, and when you mulch them, then they heat up again as well. And it means that we can then get, for each bed, we will, when we prepare it, starting next year, we've also got wormeries as well, which use the waste food from the campers and the household and any other weed-free waste. And it can be, they're rat-proof, so it can be quite rich stuff that you wouldn't normally put in a compost heap if you were trying to stop the rats getting in. So the plan for next year is to firstly develop a different kind of watering system. So I'll just give you a little brief where we've got to at the moment. We're mulching everything, covering the mulch with quite a lot of weed-free compost that we've made from wood chips. So we're feeding the soil a lot and building it up, and it's getting lighter and easier to work, easier to weed. And every year we mulch before we plant or sow, and that means we don't need to bother weeding very much at all. What we're adding in this year is drip lines that we're going to put in under the mulch so that we can water in the most efficient way. Both in terms of time and reducing water loss. So bed preparation in the coming year is going to be check that there's nothing really big stalks that's going to hold the mulch up, and then either move them or strim. Check that you don't need to fork the bed over, and we've got a broad fork that we'd use if we need to, but we're anticipating not using it very much. And then put some kind of fertility on the ground if it's a crop that needs that, like brassicas or something like that. The fertility is going to be concentrated plant nutrition from our wormeries. We got 10 really big wormeries, and we can collect the liquid from underneath them, so you'll have a little tap on the bottom and it runs down and you collect it in something. So either we'll put some of that on or we'll put worm castings on. And then we might occasionally put slug pellets down. It depends on whether it's a sluggy year. If we've had a mild winter and there's a lot of slugs, the pellets will be organically registered ones, and we only just started using them last year. So it's a new thing, and I'm not very comfortable with using them, but they absolutely transform the growing. The idea is that if the slugs eat them, they go into the ground and die, so there's less, and they're meant to be wildlife friendly as well. But we think if we put them under the mulch, then things can't pick them up either. And we'll only do it on a crop that we think is vulnerable. Anyway,
Anyway,
Bed prep.
hold on. Wow, we're getting into the minutiae of the farming. So Cordelia is obviously taking care of a lot of the farming work and looking to the future of the beds. And Cordelia, just thank you very much for showing us around your land. Chris has filled us in, and I just want to say we've had a great time on this farm here. And where exactly are you located?
Just outside Frome in Somerset.
Just outside Frome, Somerset, UK. Joe Diomede signing off here from Vallis Veg. Look around, and can you give a quick span there? Joe Diomede, Telly Montbron signing off with my interesting microphone here. Saying thank you very much, Chris, Cordelia, and Somerset. Bye.